Barak Yahawah, Bahashem Yahawashi, Bahashem Rawchaa Qadash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is basically Deuteronomy 28th chapter. And pretty much this is like a response to a comment that was left of a question that a brother had, concerning Deuteronomy the 28th chapter. And I said, Lord's will, I would get to it. So I'm gonna just give me 1 minute real quick. Give me a second. I forgot to write something down over here. Put together a couple of notes, a couple of precepts. And Lord's will, it'll be an edifying lesson. But one thing to take away from Deuteronomy the 28th chapter pretty much is, people try to put Deuteronomy 28th chapter in a box to where it's already been fulfilled, and that's not the case. And when you read it with understanding, as we will, Lord's will, in this lesson, you will see beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you're not in Mars somewhere, that these curses would be something that would not just be fulfilled in 1 or 2 or 3 captivities. This is a generational thing that would follow us whithersoever we would go. So starting off with Deuteronomy 28, let's go to the 15th verse. When you read from the first verse to the 14th verse, pretty much what this is, you could just say this is the kingdom. All right, these are all the blessings that are going to come upon us for keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord, which we know according to the second covenant, the laws will be in us. So we will be perfect in keeping every law, in the book, because it's going to be in us. And another thing is we will not be teaching each other anymore. We will be teaching the other nations, how to be, how to follow our ways. We will not be teaching each other. Right now, as we're teaching each other, this is proof, one of the many proofs that we are not under the second covenant yet. The only part of the second covenant that was fulfilled was the blood sacrifice that Yahawashi, did 2,000 years ago in order to make the covenant or give the covenant the force, so that when it's fully fulfilled, it's already enforced because of the blood of Yahawashi. So Deuteronomy 28:15 says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy power," meaning if we wouldn't listen to the voice of the Lord, meaning what? The prophets that the Lord set up, the men that he set up, the mediators that he set up. It says, "To observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day," meaning not only to see, but also to do everything written within this book, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So from the 16th verse to the end, the 68th verse, there would be a series of things that would happen upon us, curses that would come upon us, if we didn't keep the things that are written in this book that was given to Moses by the Heavenly Father, Yahawah, to give to the children of Israel. All right. Now, when we jump down to the 45th verse, right, it says here, "Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee." So the Lord was already telling us by the mouth of Moses that the curses were going to come upon us anyway. And how do we know that? Well, when we go to the book of Romans, the 8th chapter and the 20th verse, it says, "For the creature," which we are the creature. The word creature simply means to create, doesn't mean a monster. "For the creature was made" what? Subject to vanity. What does it mean to be subject? It means to be under the rule of vanity or wickedness. So we were already made subject to wickedness, to sin, to going off. Not willingly, see? So it wasn't we didn't have a choice in the matter. You know, the Lord set it up that way for a reason. It says, but by reason of him, who? Yahawah, the Most High, who have subjected the same in hope. So the same way we were subjected to vanity, we are subjected through hope, or to hope, through the mercy of Yahawah and his son Yahawashi. All right. So going back here, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall what? Pursue thee. What does it mean to pursue something or someone? It means to be on them like a heat-seeking missile. So anywhere you go, anywhere you turn, the curses would be there following us. You know, wherever we would be on the planet Earth, these curses would follow us. Now, when you apply that all in all, every captivity that we were in, obviously we were not in our land. You know, back then we were close. In certain cases, we went back, you know, but not in every case, you know, not in every case. Just Salakia. Not in every case, all right? Just in the cases where we were near, you know, to our land. Like when we were in the Medo-Persian Empire, you know, when we were in the Medo-Persian Empire, pretty much in the Medo-Persian Empire, you know, we were allowed to go back to our land, you know, build things up, you know, but for the most part, you know, especially when you bring it up to date now, because during the time of the Roman Empire, we were in captivity under the Romans, but we were still in our land. But today, we are not in our land. So there are certain things that we owned back then, like land, you know, like cattle and things of that nature, which we cannot fulfill today, you know, or that does not apply today. All right. And as you read through the curses, you'll see what I mean. All right. So it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and what shall pursue thee, meaning they will follow us wherever we go. And what? Overtake thee, meaning that not only will they follow us, but they will come upon us. And there'll be nothing that we could do. Like you have this saying, you know, I have this dark cloud over me, and no matter what I do, I can't shake it. Well, that's how the curses are. This is why the only one that can remove the curses from us is Yahawah Bashem Yahawashi. And that's why the effect of these curses are going to be transferred over to Esau and the other nations when the kingdom is established. Because they're going to suffer the things that we suffered. Remember, the Lord told Esau, you know, they whose judgment was not to drink of the cup have assuredly drunk him, and art thou he who shall go altogether unpunished. Thou shalt not go altogether unpunished, but thou shalt surely drink of it, in so many words. It says, and overtake thee till what? Till thou be destroyed, meaning destructured. And it happens so that not only in the past, in the different captivities were our forefathers destroyed, but bring it all the way up to date, we were totally not just destroyed and conquered, but destructured from our heritage, from our nationality, from our language, from the knowledge of these laws, statutes, and commandments, this book being ours, given to us by the Most High through Moses, you know, and we lost everything. We were totally destroyed. Because thou what? Hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy power to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. But it doesn't stop there. And they, meaning the curses, shall be upon thee. For what? For a sign. So wherever you see people catching this hell, you know, and these curses, that is a clear-cut sign that they are the Israelites. For a sign and what? And for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever, meaning generational. So these curses are generational. And the only time these curses will stop being upon us as a nation will be when Yahawashi comes back and delivers the elect. And that'll be the great reset, so to speak. All right? So this is how we know that these curses don't just apply to 1 or 2 or 3 captivities. Now, when we jump back up, you go to the 16th verse. It says, cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Anywhere, any city we would be in, we would be cursed. Why? Because a part of the curse was that we would be scattered among all nations. And it says that among these nations thou shalt find no ease. So being cursed in the city, wherever we go, you could see that in these major cities where you have so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, the people that are cursed are the Israelites. You know, you go to the so-called ghettos, right? You see so-called Negroes, you see so-called West Indians, so-called Haitians, you know, in those areas, they're cursed. For the so-called Latin tribes, they're called barrios, which is the same shit. And you see what so-called Puerto Ricans, so-called Cubans, so-called Dominicans, all in that same rut. You go to the reservations, which they call the res, among the so-called North American Indians. What do you see? You see Gad in those deplorable conditions, cursed. So no matter where we would be cursed. And cursed shalt thou be in the field. When you read the book of Matthew, the 13th chapter, it gives you a description of what the field is. The field is the world. So no matter where we would be in the world, you know, we would be cursed. Whether it's a favela, whether it's a shanty town, whether it's the ends over there in England, you know. It says, cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Thy basket would be your pocket, your money. Your store would be what? Your bank account. You know, for the most, you have some jakes out there that got money. And this is why you have individuals that say, well, they're talking about, you know, that these curses are upon black people. But, you know, I know a whole community of so-called black people that are not going through this. They're very well off. Yeah, well, there are exceptions to the rules. But on the whole, who do you see in these conditions, these deplorable conditions? You know, welfare, you know, food stamps, you know, Section 8, and all of these different, you know, so-called, what they call so-called handouts or helps from the government. The so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, although you have a lot of Edomites, well-to-do Edomites that are also on this assistance, but they're using it to build up their wealth. Unlike Jake is just using it to splurge, you know, in the hood, living hood rich. It says, cursed shall be the fruit of thy body. What is the fruit of our body? Our children. And the fruit of thy land. So now, obviously, the fruit of our land will be what? The vegetation. You know, whether it's grapes, whether it's, you know, corn, whatever it was, you know, wheat, harvest. Obviously, we don't have land now. So obviously, this cannot apply to now. This would apply back during the time of the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire. All right? And even when you come up to date to when slavery was so-called done away with or abolished during the so-called Emancipation Proclamation, which is not freedom. It's just a handing over from one plantation owner to another. You had sharecroppers. Sharecroppers were not even allowed, really hardly ever made any profit off of their sharecropping. Why? Because the master, that devil, would make it to where they charge you for everything, room, board, food, you know, use of equipment and all of that. So by the time it came around, you pretty much was working for free. All right. The increase of thy kind, which are, you know, your cattle, and the flocks of thy sheep. So obviously this didn't apply to America. Why? Because we don't own any of these things. But when you go back to the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, so on and so forth, these things applied then. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, meaning when you're born into this world, you're born into a curse, and especially now, and even back then, because, you know, a lot of Israelites were being born into what? Into captivity. You know, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. So when you're born, you're cursed, and when you die, you're cursed. And even here in America, when Jake is born in America, they're born into a curse, or even around the world. And when they die, they're born into a curse, because for the most part, there is no inheritance coming from our fathers and their fathers, so on and so forth, because, you know, of the curses. All right. Deuteronomy 28. And matter of fact, before we go on, let me see something. I have here marked the 18th verse. Right, so let's deal with this real quick. The fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Let's go real quick to the book of Isaiah, chapter 3 and 1. It says, for behold, the Lord of hosts doth take away from Jerusalem what? And from Judah, which is both kingdoms, the stay and the staff, right? Which is, our power, the resources that we have. The whole stay of what? Bread, and the whole stay of water. Why? Because when we went into captivity under these nations, they took control of all of that. Because when you take over a nation, you take over the people for slaves, you take over the cattle, for your purpose, for your benefit. You take over the land, the vegetation, and all of that. The mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient. And, when you go to these different captivities, that's what happened. They began with what? With the king. Then they went down to the nobles, so on and so forth, on down. The well-to-dos, and in the case of the Babylonian Empire, they left the poorest of the people there to till the land. So going back to Deuteronomy 28, now let's jump to the 20th verse. It says, the Lord shall send upon thee what? Cursing, vexation, and rebuke. And this is what you see among Jake. Let's go to a couple of these words. Let's go to cursing. The word there is ma'ara, which is like curse. It says execration, bitterness, arar, which is the actual word for curse. See? Curse bitterly. When you look that up. So it's pretty much bitterness. And you see that in Jake. This is why they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol. They do the shit that they do. Vexation, the word is mahawamah. Tumult, confusion, disquietude, see? And you see that. Disquietude means there's no peace, no quietness. And you see that among Jake. And this happened in all the different captivities. You had tumults among Jake. You had tumults here in America. You see factions of different, gangs and all that fighting against each other. Jake against Jake. But when, as the elder Malcolm was putting it in, when I did some of the research, it's, he's correct. I had done some research before when I was doing lessons on Ezekiel 37. And when those gangs were created, they were created to patrol the neighborhoods to make sure that the people were not being treated bad. But then later on, Esau turned it to where it was warring factions against Jake, as to where you see today. These are all parts of the curses, right? Then we have the word rebuke. The word rebuke is magairath. Rebuke, reproof, right? Because the things that Jake do out here, they need correction. They do things that are rebuked, that are supposed to be rebuked. But what happens? Don't nobody know the law. Don't nobody know what's going on. They don't even know that they're Israelites. So who's going to reprove and rebuke them? And this is happening through the prophets that are out there. All right. It says, the Lord shall send upon the cursing, vexation, and rebuke. So everything that Jake does is going to be some sort of vexation. It says, in all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do. So anything that you try to do, it's not going to work for the most part, unless you sell out. Now, there are exceptions to the rules, but it's not going to work out for the most part. That's why you had all of these different towns. I forgot what the elder Makama called them. I've heard about them before. I didn't know all of them. You had, if I'm not mistaken, he called them drowned towns. If I heard him correctly, I was trying to make out what he was saying, but I couldn't make it out. Where they had these Jake communities that were doing very well. But what happened? Esau came in there, said some false shit, and eventually, they destroyed those cities, and those cities was thriving so much that when you go to look for those cities now, they're gone. They're underwater. They've built lakes over them. Central Park, part of Central Park at one time, I believe that was Seneca, was a community of Jakes, that was taken over, and now it's Central Park. So like it for 1 minute. So all of these things were things that Esau did. So when Jake now talks about pulling the monies and the resources together, look, that's already been done before. Don't you understand that our people are under curses, and no matter what we would do, it wouldn't work? Because if it was meant, okay, drown towns, the water, brother. If it was meant for these places to prosper and for Jake to prosper, it would have happened. This is why the main time when Jake really prospers and stays prospering is when they sell out. All right. It says, until what? Thou will be destroyed. So everything that you do, you're gonna catch hell until you be destroyed. This is why you see Jake in the condition that they're in. And after a while, Jake gives up. Like back in the 60s, you had a lot of Jakes that were coming back from the war, from the Vietnam War, and they were trying to find jobs. They couldn't find jobs. So what were they left with? They were left with just getting high, getting drunk, because Esau didn't want to give them opportunities. And now we know it's the curses, but we also understand that they understand that when Jake is given the ability to pull their resources together and get money, that they better themselves. And Esau don't want that. He wants Jake to be in the condition that they're in. All right, it says, and until thou what? Perish quickly. And you see a lot of young Israelite men especially, and even now these women are being put to death at a very young age. There's a scripture in Jeremiah, I think it says, death has come up into our windows. It says, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. And this is the reason why. Now, jumping down. Oh, matter of fact, I'm sorry. Before we go there, let's go to Isaiah 51. These were some precepts I was following, and others that I got, doing a little research, just trying to get some precepts, to go with it, to explain it a little more. Isaiah 51:19. These two things that come unto thee, who shall be sorry for thee? Desolation and destruction. Why? Because of the curses. And the famine and the sword. These are all because of the curses. By whom shall I comfort thee? And these are the things that the Lord is bringing hell upon Jake. Then it also says, and you have not, looked to the Lord for help. Then not turn to the Lord. And you see that they don't turn to the Lord. And when you show them, the scriptures, they don't want to hear the scriptures. Thy sons what? Have fainted. Let's look up this word fainted. The word there is ilap. To cover, covered, encrusted. To unwrap oneself, disguise oneself. Faint, right? They fainted. They've disguised themselves because right now they're what? They look like beasts out there. I was watching the latest video that the priest Zakar from the New York camp did with these women. I forget the name of that show, not important. They're on the 3rd season now, and it's just total, it's like, damn. And see, this is how the nations view all of Jake, based off of the behavior of some. And it's catching on like wildfire because people are drawn to that because they think that that's natural behavior. And it's not natural. It's totally unnatural. All right. It says, thy sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets. Who's on the street corners hanging out? Jake. Talking shit, drinking, getting high, wasting away. And this is something that a dude be in high school, hanging out in the corner, And here it is, you come back years later, he's in his 50s and 60s, still hanging out in the same corners, talking shit, doing the same shit. As a wild bull in the net, yeah, because they become like wild bulls in the net. This is why they act the way they act. They become beasts. Yep, like the brother put, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. They are all full of the what? The fury of the Lord, going back to the curses. The rebuke of thy power, see? And this is what happened. We were rebuked by the power of the Most High. And this is why we were in that condition. The Lord had mercy on us to bring us out of it. But for the most part, Jake as a whole is in that condition, worldwide, no matter where you go. Now, Deuteronomy 28 and 21, the Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee. What is a pestilence? Pestilence is sickness. Let's look up the word pestilence. And that thing with the what we read about Jake, that's something that was going on even back then in them different places. Why do you think it was said, can any good thing come out of Galilee? Because you had hoods in Galilee. You had these same Jakes, these same gang banging, Jakes that do what they do today. They were doing the shit back then. There's nothing new under the sun. The word there is debar, which means word, but it also means pestilence, plague. So it's a plague or a pestilence or sicknesses that comes upon Jake. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee until he have consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it. Now let's go from there to a couple of precepts. Let's go to Amos. Matter of fact, Amos 4. So this happened in different captivities. Jake was suffering, these sicknesses, that came upon them. Why? Because of, breaking the laws, statutes, and commandments. Amos 4:10, I have sent among you the what? The pestilence, after the manner of Egypt, because I was part of the curse. Your young men have I slain with the sword, see, and have taken away your houses, and I have made the stink of your camps to come up unto your nostrils, yet have you not returned unto me, saith the Lord Yahawah, because they still don't acknowledge the power of Yahawah. So going back to Deuteronomy, I'm sorry, one more. So this happened like during the Babylonian Empire, and you could update it till now, and even during the time of the Medieval Persians and the Greeks and the Romans, and even to this day, during the Dark Ages, even though during the Dark Ages Jake was ruling, there were still pestilences around him. You had the bubonic and the pneumonic plague. What was that all about? That was a direct plague from the Most High that he brought upon Jake for being wicked. But yet they were saying that they were following the Lord's laws, so-called Christianity. Let's go to Matthew 24, because this was further up after all of those captivities, after the captivity of the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Medo-Persians, and the Greeks. This was something that was said in the Roman Empire, but this was something for the future to know when the Lord was going to come back. So Matthew 24:7 says, for nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and this is part of the curses, and pestilences or sicknesses, and earthquake in divers places. All right. So it happened in different times, in different captivities, in different ways, but it all stems back to the curses of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. Now, Deuteronomy 28, let's go to 22. Says, the Lord shall smite thee with the consumption. Right, the consumption means to emaciate, like what you had these different cancers, and you see how people look when they have cancer. They're all, drawn in. The word there is shakapath, consumption, wasting disease, or wasting disease of the lungs. Right here, emaciation, when you ever see a dog that they say that's emaciated, all you see is skin and bones on the dog. Let me see if they, see? That's it right there. So, you can type that in when you get a chance. It says, smite thee with the consumption and with a fever and with an inflammation. That's where you get all of these diseases from inflammation. Different inflammations of the body. That's where you get those discomforts from. And with an extreme burning. Let's go to the word extreme burning. The word is charachar. Extreme heat, inflammation, violent heat, fever. Right, going back to fever and very high fevers. From what? From all these different diseases. And you see, Jake, that's fucked up. Excuse my language. It says, and with the sword, and you see that. Well, actually, this word sword here. Okay, it says charab, but in the Bible, I forgot what word was actually there. I forgot what was actually there. I can't remember right now. But it says, and with blasting, let's go to blasting. And that's not talking about being blasted with a pistol. The word is shadapah, which means brighted or blasted thing, blighted, blasted, blight of crops. Right. Which is what? Matter of fact, let's look up the word blight. A plant disease. Right. So our crops were diseased. And this is, the Lord would send locusts to eat them up. He would send funguses and diseases on the food to where the food was no good. So there was, it's a lot to the curses, man. So going back, it says mildew, which is, mold. Yara Kwawan, mildew, paleness, lividness, right. Which is mildew. And you see, a lot of Jakes live with mildew in their homes, mildew on their clothes, and these things are unclean and they make you sick. With mildew, same thing. Well, actually, I already read that. And they shall pursue thee. See, so no matter where we would go, they will pursue us until thou perish. See, so these are all parts of the curses. Let's see. Let's move on. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Now, this goes hand in hand with the 48th verse, right? Right. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee. So it wasn't just one enemy. Enemies. More proof that it's talking about more than one captivity. No matter where we would go on the planet, the Lord would do, these curses would follow us. No matter what nation we were under, these curses would follow us. So it's not something that, Deuteronomy 28 was already fulfilled in the Babylonian captivity. No, parts of it was, but not all of it. And in every captivity that we went into, we didn't go through the same curses, because some captivities gave us, benefits, like the Medo-Persian Empire. They weren't as hard on us as the Babylonians were, or as the Greeks were. The Romans gave Jake, favors until Jake started, acting stupid, and then they had to put it down. It says, which the Lord shall send against thee, what? In hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in one of all things, meaning anything that we want, we have to go to them. Doesn't matter if you're a good cook, you know how to cook, you still got to go to them for supplies. You have women and men that are very good seamstresses or seamstress or tailors, but where do they get their material from? They got to go to Esau. So no matter how you twist it and turn it, we had to go to this man for everything. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee. Now you take the word yoke of iron. You go to images. Boom, what do you have? These are yokes of iron. All right, these are all yokes of iron that were put upon Jake. You had some Gadites that had it, you know, but for the most part, the so-called Negroes, West Indians, and Haitians, you know, wore these, you know. And this is something that was going to be upon us as a sign. I wish they had this better one. Then they had some. Look at this. Look at that. See that? I mean, this is you know, IUIC's thing. I'm not, you know, this is fair use. I'm just showing. And this is I'm not sure if this is that movie Goodbye Uncle Tom. I'm not sure if that's from that movie. But you could see the contraptions that they put over Jake's head. And what did it say? Jumping back up to the 24th verse, was it? Or the 23rd verse. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass. Is this not over their head? And what is it? Probably this one's probably made out of steel, you know. Shall be brass. You're gonna have, and then it says, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Let's type in shackles. Let's see what comes up. You know what? Let me go back. Put slave shackles. Let's see what comes up. In the movie Django, they showed you some of that, where the shackles were on their feet. Matter of fact, there was, is this it? No, there was a special or documentary that they did, and the individual was holding on to chains and different things in there, and he was saying how you could still feel the oppression, you know, that they suffered. You know, look at that Negro woman or child. Look at these are all, you know, locks. Then you had, you know, chains. You had, matter of fact, let me put Django slave shackles. Let me see what comes up. I just want to, even though it's a movie, we know it's a, you know. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Is this it? No, that looks like can't really tell. But anyway, let's go here. Let's try this one. Here you see the shackles, the brass over their head. Look at that. You know, you don't see Edomites walking around like this. You know, even a woman back here got it on. You know, now I was trying to get the, let me see if I put in, because they showed a very good picture of it. And I remember even one of those cats from the Black unconscious community said that they showed a real good depiction in Django how the shackles were cutting into the feet of Jake. You know, I forgot who it was. I'm not sure who it was, but they were doing like they were speaking on it. And this is, you know, this is somewhat, you know, you see, they had the shackles on the feet. And they show you that in the different movies, you know, Mandingo, Drum, you know, and others. So that's what this is talking about. And the earth that is under thee shall be iron. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon thee until thou be destroyed. Right, because the Lord withheld the rain. Let me see if that comes up. Let me try it like this. Okay. All right, just to move on. Let's go to the book of Isaiah chapter 3. Let's see what that says. Let me get rid of some of these. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 3. That's what I had, right? Isaiah chapter 3. No, Jeremiah chapter 3. And verses 2. Lift up thine eyes unto the high places, and see where thou hast not been lined with. In the ways hast thou sat for them, as the Arabian in the wilderness, and thou hast polluted the land with thy whoredoms and with thy wickedness. This is dealing with going back to, idolatry. Therefore the showers have been withholden, and there hath been no latter rain, and thou hadst a whore's forehead, thou refusest to be ashamed. So you had the former rain and the latter rain, because you had, for lack of better words, you had two harvests. I put it that way, two harvests. One during the Feast of First Fruits, which was the first one, and then around the time of fall, you had another one. And the Lord would give us the early rain and the latter rain. And those things were held up. And there was, that's why the Lord called it and said dust. It would be dust, because there would be like a drought. There would be no rain. During the time of Ahab, that happened for 3.5 years. There was no rain for 3.5 years. And this happened in different, captivities that we were in. This and not just captivities. Actually, this was a curse that could be upon us while we were not in captivity. You see, this is a curse that can be upon us while we were in our land. So you see how it doesn't necessarily have to be a captivity where this happens. This actually happened during the time of Ahab. Ahab and Jezebel, and they weren't in captivity at the time. They were kings. Ahab was a king in Israel. So now let's go from there. Let's move on. It says, the Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Right, and that would happen. You would go to fight before the enemy, and we would flee. And that happened during the time when the kingdom was still set up, and that happened during the time of certain captivities. And that just happened in war in general. Today, brothers use the analogy that, you have one cop that looks like Barney Fife. You could look up Barney Fife so you can see who he looks like. And, they would actually, come around, and you have 10, 15 Jakes, and they'll just scatter. That's a part of the curses, man. You will go out to war, and then, at a small number of men, our men will be scattered. These are all part of the curses. Thou shalt go out one way against them, right, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. Why? Because the Lord was not with our forefathers back then. Okay? It says, and thy carcass shall be meat unto all the fowls of the air. Why? Because you will be out there in the open field, and everybody's bouncing. So if you're dead, ain't nobody going to be able to pick up your body and bury you. It says, and thy carcass shall be meat unto all the fowls of the air and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. And when you go through Deuteronomy 28, you're going to see this phrase quite a bit, maybe around 4 times if I'm not mistaken. No man shall fray them away, no man shall help thee, no man shall redeem thee, no man shall buy you. It all means the same thing, because these curses will be upon us. And there was no way to get out of it, because the Lord Yahawah put these curses upon us for a reason. It was a punishment. You could read Daniel's 9th chapter. And in Daniel's 9th chapter, it speaks about the curses coming upon us and how no other nation suffered like the nation of Israel suffered. So if we look at these curses today and certain ones that still apply today, and you look at the people that are suffering these things, for the most part, it's the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians that are suffering these things. Now, some people will say, well, the Irish went into slavery. Yes, they did. You know why? Because a lot of those Irish are really so-called black people or Jakes that look like so-called white people. Same thing with the Sicilians. Same thing with certain Italians. Same thing with certain Scottish people. These curses would be on the Israelites. That's why you go to India. You have the Dalit, which were the untouchables, if I'm not mistaken. They're going through hell. Their own Elamite people, the East Indians, don't accept them. Why? Because they are Israelites. These curses would follow us wheresoever we would go. And you had a large community of Israelites in that region that left their seed there. And remember, Jake was coming back during the time of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Jake was coming from all those different parts out there. So what, they just disappeared? They all went to Jerusalem and were destroyed in 70 AD? No. That's why Yahawashi said, when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, flee. And a lot of those Israelites fled back to their country. It says, the Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt. What is the botch of Egypt? This is going into boils. Now boils, now the hemorrhoids are a little different, because hemorrhoids are your intestines coming out of your anal cavity. Salaki, I had to get graphic. They call me a graphico. But boils are, you see sometimes people with these like knots all over their bodies, on their face, on their neck, on their arms. Those are boils. Boil, inflamed spot, inflammation, eruption, Then sometimes they break open. These are all, and then you have Jakes today with all these different skin diseases, and their bodies telling them that they're toxic, and the flesh, which is the biggest organ of them all. I've heard many doctors say the same thing. Physicians, that the body is expelling these things. But after a while, the immune system gets overwhelmed, and then it shuts down because it can't keep up with all the shit that you're putting into it. Of man, leprosy, right? Because you had different forms of leprosy. You had the skin turning white. You have somebody that was completely white, like Miriam when she got turned completely white. These are different forms of leprosy. Then you had raw spots in the flesh. If it wasn't a cut, then it was leprosy. So on and so forth. And these are all curses that come upon Jake today. Smite thee with the botch of Egypt and with the emerald. The emeralds are the hemorrhoids. All right? And a lot of Israelites have problem with hemorrhoids because of the digestive system, because of the shit that we eat. Oh, the brother said they do all the work, all the lowly work, and the Elamites would take their women and have sex with them, the untouchables. Yeah, there you go. And who was that? Gandhi that called them the untouchables? It says, and with the scab, the word there is garab. Itch, scab, right. You have, different itches. You have, back in the days, you had, I'm sure they still have it, chicken pox and smallpox and all kind of, different, all different kind of diseases. So here he's got scurvy. Excuse me. And with the itch, right? It says what? It says, and with the itch whereof thou canst not be healed. See? And there's different herbs and things that you could take. And even if you do the research, the first thing that must be done is prayer to Yahawah Shem Yahawashi. Then after you get the medicine, you pray over the medicine and you ask the Lord to heal you with the medicine. But the problem is you could do all the research in the world and get the right medicine, the right combinations. But a lot of these herbs today are tainted. They're irradiated. So they don't work as, good as they would. And back in the days, you would really go out into the woods and get them because they would be nice and fresh. You had tree barks and different things that you could get, roots that you could take to help. But we lost that science. And then today, when you go and get it, it's not as potent as it was back then because of these devils fucked it up because they know, they give the AMA, to the world, but they take away the natural paths which they use. You see? It says, the Lord shall smite thee with madness. And you see that. Jake out in the street talking to himself, bugged out. These are all parts of the curses that the Lord said will come upon us. And blindness, right. You know, of course you have physical blindness. This is why when Yahawashi came on the scene, what was he doing? He was healing the people. You had people back then that were mad, that were blind, you know, that were, that couldn't actually see. They were actually blind. And what did Yahawashi do? He healed them. And that was a part of, you know, the gospel that he gave to the disciples back then, which became apostles, you know, to heal the sick and all of that, you know. It says, an astonishment of heart, right? Astonishment of heart. Let's look up this word astonishment. The word there is thamahawan, astonishment, bewilderment, stupefaction, right? And you see that Jake is, you know, they have no direction, no clue. Look at the shit that they're doing. Look at their behavior. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Therefore, my people are going into captivity because they have no knowledge. There's a stupefaction. You know, only a gorilla would act like that. But the problem is, there's no direction. But it's all a part of the curses. That's what people fail to realize. It's all a part of the curses. All right. It says, verse 29, and thou shalt grope at noonday. What does it mean to grope? Person that gropes is like a person that's walking that can't see, and they're groping trying to feel their way around, you know. But the Lord said at noonday, so it's not physically blind, you know, but spiritually blind, looking around trying to. The scripture even tells us in Romans 11 and 7, it says, what then? Israel have not obtained that which he seeketh for. Why? Seeketh for. But the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. This is all a part of the curses. You see? Do you see? Going back, as the blind gropeth in darkness, right? Because you're walking about, but you don't know where you're going. This is why the truth had to come out, because there was a dark veil over Babylon, you know? And some of these things are happening today because back then, although we were in captivity, we still knew that we were Israelites, you know? There was a precept that just came to mind. Oh, you know, back then we still, at least we knew that we were Israelites. Jake don't know that today. And even when you try to bring it out to them, they're not trying to hear it because they were blinded by the Most High. Let me see. The brother said Gandhi was an Brahmin, which is the top Elamite caste. Okay, yeah, because you had different castes, right? And this caste is like Esau. Yep, they can do what they want to you. Take your woman, Jake, untouchable woman. Yeah, dirty mother. It says Isaiah 25 and 7, and he will destroy in this mountain, meaning Most High is going to destroy in this mountain, meaning America, the face of the covering cast over all people and the veil that is spread over all nations. So that blindness, the Lord was going to take it away. So the elect are going to be able to move about in this society and see the truth. But the rest were blinded. It says, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. So no matter what you do, you will not prosper. This is why, going back to those drowned towns, you know, that's why they didn't last. You know, before Esau came over to this side of the world, you know, although the tribes were warring against each other, they had thriving communities. Then Esau came and did what? Took them away. Hid the records. Burnt the books. You know, the same thing he did with those, what they call drowned towns. You know, this is why you don't hear about that. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore. Oppressed, you know, being as was a sentiment back when the One West was still there. The first hired, the first fired, the last hired. You know, evermore, meaning perpetually. Oppressed and spoiled. No matter what you do. It says, and no man shall what? Save thee. See, this is the second time it popped up. So this is the sentiment. These curses are going to come upon us, and no man is going to be able to get rid of them for us. The only one that's going to do that is Yahawashi. He said he's not going to come as and meet these devils as a man. All right? So when you read Deuteronomy 28:68, when it says no man shall buy you, this is what it's talking about. Redeem you. Because that word can also be used for redeem. Qanah, I believe the word is in the Hebrew. It says, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Right? You've seen this during slavery, and even in different captivities. You know, but more so today during the time of slavery. And even when the Spaniards came over here, they would take the women of the northern kingdom and rape them. Now, among the Taino women, I'm not sure if all of the women did the same thing, but among the Taino women, when they got raped and they found out that they were pregnant with these devils' babies, they would commit suicide and kill the baby too. You know, to show you the disdain that they have for these devils. You know? It says, thou shalt build... matter of fact, before we read on, let's go from there. Let's go to Lamentations. And I'll probably stop at this verse here. And Lord's will, I'm going to have to come back and maybe do a part 2 to this. Because there's a lot. There's a lot here. Lamentations 5:11, they ravished the women in Zion and the maids in the cities of Judah. This is what? The Babylonian captivity. This also happened during the time when Esau came over here to the side of the world, brought Jacob in captivity. Before they brought Jacob in captivity and was raping the other women of the northern kingdom. So it depends on what curse it is. It depends on what time period it is that these things apply. So all of these curses in Deuteronomy 28 have not been fulfilled yet. The 45th and the 46th verse tell us this. But when you have ulterior motives, like vocab and the so-called apologists, they want to just take a brush and just sweep it. Because even Dr. James White, the Edomite, he tried to do something on Deuteronomy 28, and I'm thinking, okay, he's a scholar, so he's gonna go in. So let me just, check out what he got to say. And do my rebuttal. And he pretty much just brushed over everything. I said, this guy don't know the scriptures. He might now he knows those terminologies, but he don't really know the scriptures like that. This is why they argue what? They argue theologian terms. They don't argue or defend the gospel. They defend the what's the word I'm looking for? They defend the there's a word for it. For lack of better words, the teachings of Edomite supremacy. There's a term for it, but that's what they defend. They're not defending the gospel. It says, thou shalt build an house and thou shalt not dwell therein, right? And all of these homes you see built, Jake did that. They show you that in the movie 12 Years a Slave, where he had to build that house. No, it's not exegesis, it's something else. It's that whole curriculum that they built. I can't. But you brothers understand what I'm saying. Thou shalt plant a vineyard. See, this happened during slavery. Who was working those cotton fields and working those banana fields and tobacco fields and all of that? That was Jake. Now, was Jake getting any benefit from that? No, because it was free labor. And shall not gather the grapes thereof. So our people did not benefit from these things. They did not benefit from these things at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here at the 30th verse. And Lord, oh snap, 1 hour. In Lord's will, I could come back and do a part 2 if the Spirit allows. But you get the idea. All of these curses, depending on what captivity it was, they apply to those different captivities. But there are still some of the curses in here that still apply today. Obviously, the ones about the land and the cattle and things of that nature, You know, and do not apply. Because Jake don't own these things anymore. You know, on that scale. So with that, I pray that you brothers and sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say Shalom.